Yo, welcome back everybody. I hope you guys are doing well as always. Recently, I've been making a lot of samples and beats in the style of Don Toliver and Travis Scott. And to be a little bit more specific, I've been doing the sort of like analog, kind of psychedelic type of sound. Now that's the exact style that I'm gonna be breaking down in this video. And if you guys are kind of unaware of what the term analog means, basically it just means that you're using real live hardware to kind of get that analog or realistic type of sound, as opposed to using maybe like the VST version of a synth that doesn't really have that just sort of like grittiness that a real live instrument would have. Personally, I only have one piece of hardware, and that's my Micro Freak synth. And I actually didn't even use that for this beat just because I wanted to kind of show you guys that it's definitely possible to achieve the analog and like psychedelic sound with just VSTs. So without further ado, this is how to make analog beats for Don Toliver. All right, so off the rip, I'm gonna tell you that your best friend is gonna be the Analog Lab VST. This is just the most versatile VST for this type of genre, just because it has a lot of emulations of those real life synths. There are a lot of good stock sounds in Analog Lab, but also there are a ton of fire producers who make insane banks for Analog Lab. I definitely recommend checking out banks from people like Max Shooter, and Keon. They have a lot of sort of like analog inspired types of banks, so definitely go check those out after this video. So to build the initial foundation for these beats, it's nice to just kind of get maybe like a pad or something. So I got this preset from Analog Lab. It's from a Haze bank, and it's the Cashmere Bell. And then I just, like I said, I laid down these just really simple chords. Now, if you're not going to be using actual hardware, the processing aspect of these melodies is pretty important. So on this first initial sound, just these chords, I have a bunch of different plugins that are doing kind of different things. So we have a comeback kid with these settings on just to kind of give it a little bit of width and delay. Then we have just a halftime plugin, and like it says in the name, this is going to just basically half your melody, so it plays at half the speed. And since my MIDI was just chords, it kind of just took those chords from a higher octave and brought them lower, but it just kind of has a special like tone to it that you can't really get by just pitching the MIDI down. Then we got a reverb to just, again, kind of give it a little bit more space. I ended up putting this fruity balance on there just because the sound was pretty quiet, so I needed to boost the volume a little bit. Then we got one of my favorite plugins for these types of beats, and it's the Cymatics Origin plugin. Basically, like it says, it's just a vintage plugin. So it adds a little bit of saturation, and this movement tab is basically just like a detuner. So I add a little bit of detune. And then this resample frequency knob in the middle, I turned it down to about 75%, a little under that. And that just basically cuts out some of those high frequencies. It just kind of gives it more of like a thin sound, more like a hardware synth. Then we just got some EQs, cutting out some very specific frequencies for the sound and then cutting the highs out. And then another EQ to just kind of cut another frequency out. Then this second sound I'm using from Analog Lab again, and it's from another Haze bank. It's the Illusion bank, and this is the motorized key preset. Now for the MIDI, I just kept the exact same chords, but as you can see, I just spaced the notes out a bunch and just kind of cut up a few of them here and there, just to kind of give it more of like an actual melody. And before I play this one, I'll go over the effects just because you'll hear them as it plays initially. But we have an EQ to cut the lows out. We have another comeback kid to just add some like space and delay. And then we have this halftime again. But the halftime is set to an automation knob, so as you can see here, it only turns on at the end of every 2 bars. So I'll just play this one in the song view so you guys can hear it with that effect. So when choosing these presets, it's important to kind of find those like gritty, sort of realistic sounding ones. You don't want stuff that sounds like too virtual or too, like ambient. Like it's got to sound like it's coming from a real synth. It's also important not to overcrowd your melody. So this next preset we got from Analog Lab again, and it's from another Haze bank, the Ghostland bank, and it's the Aftermath Evolving key. And for this one, I just added 3 little notes as kind of like accent notes. On that, we have a reverb. We have another version of Cymatics Origin, basically the same sort of presets. Then on this one, we have an effect rack, and this is actually from a Nico Baron kit, and it's the tunnel preset. And all those presets are doing really is just kind of shaping the sound to get it to be a little bit more organic sounding, kind of removing some of the frequencies, so it just kind of makes it sound like it was coming from a real synth. Then we got the bass, and this bass is from my new kit with Gateway. That's going to be dropping soon. It's called the So Clean bass. I usually tend to pick basses that have a little bit more of like grittiness to them for these types of melodies. So then now is where the real sauce comes in, and I know a lot of people are against like using loops and using phrases and like splice samples and all this stuff, but to me personally, it can really just elevate your pre-existing sample. It can just add that sort of little extra like missing aspect that it might need. And I think it's perfectly fine to add any sort of samples and whatnot. Collaboration is key for anything in music, so just add as much stuff as you want. It doesn't really matter as long as the final product sounds good to you. So like I said, a key sauce for these is adding phrases. Now, if you guys don't know what phrases are, they're basically just like little rendered out melody clips. So I added this first one from a Mac Shooter kit. It's one of the phrases from one of the Wave Crate Essential crates, I think is what it was called. But it's the flashing lights phrase. A lot of the times these phrase kits are made by people who do have a lot of analog gear, so it can help you achieve that sound without actually having the gear yourself. And I thought this phrase was perfect just because it added some cool like texture and glitchiness to the melody. And then I added one of my own phrases from the new Gateway kit as well. This is the Money Man phrase. So that is everything for the melody. I will play you guys the first like 2 sections so you guys can hear what it sounds like. So for these drums, I used 2 different drum kits. One of them was a Mac Shooter kit. I forget the exact one, but it was one of the Wave Crate kits. And then I'm also using the Sacred Society kit by Trickster. You guys have been seeing that in the past like 3 videos. I just really like that kit right now. It has a lot of like essential sounds in my opinion. So this first one we got is from a Mac Shooter kit, and it's the Like Them snare. Then we got another sound from Mac Shooter, and it's the legendary Hit 1 hi-hat. Then we got this Prophet open hat, also from the Mac Shooter kit. I tried to keep these drums pretty like mainstream sounding, as I was going for like the Don Toliver sound. Then we got another snare, and this one is from Trickster, and it's the go-to snare. A little cool thing you can do with your snares to kind of add a little bit more interest is panning. So for these last two sections, I just panned the first and second snare to the left and right. So it kind of just goes back and forth really fast in your headphones. Just creates a little cool, like interesting ear candy thing. Then we got another snare from Trickster, and it's the chop snare. And then last but not least, we got the 808, and I'm using the horror movie 808 from that same Trickster kit, and it just follows the root note of the original MIDI. So then for the arrangement, I really didn't do anything that crazy. I pretty much have all the drums playing the entire time, except for at the end of the 64 bars, I just took the two snares out. So yeah, that's gonna do it for this one. Let me know what you guys think about it in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe as well. Join my Discord and follow me on Instagram. Me and Gateway are going to be dropping the Gems multi-kit. Our goal is the end of this month. So like I said, definitely follow us on Instagram to stay up to date with that. But that's going to do it for me, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.